On June 16th, the deadline expires for public comment on the environmental impact of the proposed Roca Honda uranium mine. The project lies on Forest Service land and state trust land north of Grants. Now, this is a fantastic case study for what kinds of jobs to bring to New Mexico and at what cost. Vicki, you know, there's an interesting open question here. Let's concentrate on uranium mining in the Grants area. Very troubled history there. Yes. Lots of health problems over the years. I remember when I was in Congresswoman Wilson's office working with the Domenici office to work on Orrin Hatch's bill to get restitution. Never happened. I mean, these people have been hung up to dry. Just 30 years ago. Just 30 years ago. So that begs a question, and we can't sit here at this table in Albuquerque and pretend to think for folks out there, but the open question is, if with that kind of history, why uranium? Why is it that compelling? Is it that jobs worthy to leap over something that has potentially, you know, some history there for folks?
That's it right there.
Yeah.
Is it going to create enough jobs and bring enough to New Mexico to overcome that? The stories that came out of that time were horrific, and the health problems, and you know, the folks who are wanting to do this now are saying, you know, we've learned from our mistakes, we're not going to do this. I mean, I don't think the guys 30 years ago thought they were intentional. I mean, they weren't trying to poison people. We just know more now. So how could we? I just think it's a very risky proposal. You know, in addition to sacred lands where we're looking for the same thing. I think that's very tricky, and I think we need to be. It is, and you know, I remember in Albuquerque when we had a lot of the protests about Paseo del Norte, and you know, full disclosure, I was a reporter for the TVI Times and wrote a scathing article, but I think that that's something we have to think about. If we're going to respect one religion, we have to respect them all.
That makes sense. Now, there's been lots of reclamation out there, Jamie. I've taken tours out there where former strip mining for things. You wouldn't have even known it, looking at it afterwards. So these things can be done. There are ways to mine that can be done. So again, same question. Is there a fair trade here, potential jobs, all that kind of thing, versus the downside that happens with these things?
Well, I think science has got to work that self out. And frankly, look at the fact that 30 years have passed. Have there been innovations in mining technology that have improved the industry and conditions for workers? I would have to imagine that they are, and they should talk about those more and say the things that miners suffered 30 years ago when those mines were open, you won't be suffering from this time because we've taken these precautions, X, Y, and Z. So we ought to talk about those a little bit more and get the truth out and see if what's going on there. Water is another issue, right? There's been a discussion about, will this pollute the water? But my understanding, reading the articles that are written about it, is that it will be a conventional mining approach that won't use water and pollute water in ways that the other mining techniques have done. So that's another plus in the column here. The other thing you have to look at is the folks. I mean, there's a lot of political support here, and that area is primarily represented by Democrats in Cleveland County and the County Commission, represented by a state senator and representatives of the Democratic Party in the House and Senate side.
Did well out there too.
Did well. I mean, they're supporting this thing. But not to say that there shouldn't be listening to the community and working these things out and trying to mitigate any damage to sacred sites and that sort of stuff. But I think the balance has got to be struck. There's high unemployment out there.
And thank you for finishing right there for Sophie, because it just seems like the tsunami, not to be flip with a word here, but you know what I'm saying. The forces at work here are much bigger than any individual angst about things, it seems like, when it comes to jobs in these kind of times. Stitching our last conversation to this one, you see what I mean? If there's a way to do this safely, should it be done? Why not?
It's interesting that we're talking about jobs because it is not an extraordinarily large number of jobs, and it's not for a very long period of time. We're talking about 9 years, and the group that's managing the project has sort of dangled the possibility of an additional 9 years working for other leaseholders there, if all goes well. And so it's quite a short period of time. I think what we're looking at is a lot of tax revenue, and that's what is driving this instead of, I mean, I believe that for the community out there, the idea of that number of jobs is quite appealing. But when we balance the risks here against the potential benefits, to the state politically, that's a big chunk of change. Against the religious and, I think, environmental and cultural significance of Mount Taylor, the potential environmental degradation of the area, 9 years can both be, okay, so it's not very long that we're messing up this region. It's also not very long that those people will have those jobs.
Sure.
And
But you'd have to think things would be watched very closely in those 9
I
years.
actually,
Not as if the people
I
would have
actually
a
am somewhat
free run.
concerned about that because we are in the middle right now of a bit of a scandal here in the state over state supervision of projects. We have seen incredible cutbacks to federal supervision of environmental of projects throughout the country. I don't think that there is an appropriate amount of supervision of this type of project across the country and in New Mexico. And I don't believe that promises can be made that this will be watched to the level that would be appropriate for this kind
Fair
of
enough.
Well, I think that's the
situation.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the key right there, though, is with so many government agencies cutting these jobs, we think everything is safe because, well, hey, we've got a USDA, we've got a this, we've got a that, but
But it's not happening.
It's
We're
not
seeing that across
happening.
the country. And again, also in New Mexico. I mean, I believe we're going to talk later in the show about this very issue here in the state. So-
Absolutely. Please, if you
Regarding the timeline, I mean, to sum it up, saying it's just 9 years.
Well, it goes both ways, right?
I mean,
it's not
could-
very long either way.
When you're on the other side of that, I mean, when you're looking at it from a cultural properties
Yeah.
standpoint, from a religious standpoint, 1 year is too long.
Totally.
1 month of inappropriate use of that
Absolutely.
land is inappropriate, and I mean that's I wouldn't say property. I mean that's a part of the state that's really meaningful to a lot of people, and I think that has to be weighed. And I think that the company that responds to it notes that there are 180 archaeological sites in the patch that they intend to use,
Right.
and we're only going to affect 3 of them.
3, yes.
And when we talk in terms of like oil and gas development, for example, oil and gas developers have the same rights to come onto someone's private property because they own, the government owns the mineral rights below, and they have the right to come on your property and drill if they have that lease, except if there's things like archaeological sites.
Right.
That's one of those exemptions. That's okay. No, we're not going to develop this land, and to hear this company, pointing in the, I guess the perspective, well, there's only 3.
If I could add to
I
that
think that's
too,
just-
if I could just add to that. Also though, there's one little detail, which is their responsibility at the end is to take it back to the place where it can be used as grazing land again.
That's right.
Not to take it back to the place where it retains
was before.
its cultural and religious significance. It doesn't go back to where it was, and I think that
And how do you put it back to what it was?
you can't.
That's right.
You
That's,
can't.
that's the argument we're hearing from folks from Laguna and other places too. Jamie, interestingly, back in those days I was talking about with the Congresswoman, the argument back then to re-crank up uranium was the marketplace was getting hot. Now, nuclear energy was going to be the next alternative because everything else is played out. We don't want coal anymore. It's no such thing as clean coal. It's got to be, all that kind of thing. It never really happened. So the vagaries of the marketplace, how do we fit that into our decision making here? Because what's great one year for uranium could be like in the dust the next year.
It's true. I mean, the price of uranium per pound is something like $41 right now, which is pretty low and may not be enough at this time to make it a profitable mine. But I think what the companies involved in this project are projecting is that, look, there's a demand for more uranium because of the nuclear industry still we need to fuel these plants that are all over the country, the 104 plants that we have around the country. So that's something that we have to think about. We have to think about where we source that from. New Mexico's uranium is the highest quality in the country. That's indisputable. These are factors that go into all of this that, again, require that balance. And I hope that there's just more continued conversations about this, and we find strike those balances between the community and the religious significance of these things, the environmental concerns, the workplace safety, and also economic and energy security.
Absolutely, well said. Now, just after the break, journalist Richard Stolley looks back on a storied career. Wait, do you see this? And ahead to the future of journalism.